The healthy infant laid his hands on his ailing, dying twin brother as they were resting side by side. Then something happened. Everyone started crying incessantly thereafter. Welcome to USA Stories channel. Do not forget to subscribe and activate the bell button to receive all new updates. Now let's go to the story. All of this began with a single adolescent girl called Catalina. Her parents wanted her to become a dentist since they were successful dentists. They had given up everything to give her the best chance at a bright future. Catalina also failed to mention that everything would go according to her parents' plans. Her plan was to work for her parents' company after college and find a suitable partner. Amidst all these lovely schemes, there was one more that was a little out of the ordinary. Catalina had no desire to have children. She saw the suffering, the tears, the responsibilities that her parents had endured in an attempt to make her happy, and she wanted none of it. She didn't want to raise her children in a society where everyone was always fighting something because there was so much pain in the world. After a few years, Catalina went to college and discovered a world other from the idyllic existence she had known. Doing housework was so tough for her. Everything in her life appeared to be in disarray. She even paid someone a lot of money to complete all of this. She discovered that her parents had never taught her how to support herself. Everything had been laid on a silver platter by them. Her life has now become extremely difficult and intricate. If it was hard for her to fend for herself, then how would she be able to care for her children? Her determination to avoid having children, now, in the future, or even in her next life, was only strengthened by all of them. Catalina began working with her parents just before she left college. She also met Alex at this time, a boy with whom she fell profoundly in love. With his successful business and excellent family background, Catalina's parents were confident she would have a happy and stress-free life with him. This couple discovered during a talk that they weren't currently interested in starting a family, but Alex was willing to entertain them later. Sadly, they made a grave error that resulted in a fatal incident. Neither of them talked about their future intentions about this. After a few years, Alex got down on one knee and proposed to the woman of his dreams, believing the moment had come for them to get married. But what followed gave him the impression that he was kneeling in front of an unknown person. Just a short while after Catalina said yes to his proposal, the couple was still enjoying the moment's exhilaration when Alex made an unexpected suggestion. It would be best for them to have children when they are 30 or 35, he advised his girlfriend. But he received the greatest surprise of his life. She informed him that she was completely opposed to having children. But before she could finish speaking, Alex lost it. He thought she had lied to him. He yelled at her, full of rage and retaliation, saying all kinds of horrible things that not even an enemy should hear. He didn't even know how wrong he was until he was finished, at which point he detested every part of himself. He realized how much he had wounded her. The lady he had just made unhappy was standing right in front of him, grinning as pretty as he had ever seen. "It's fine. I forgive you," she continued. Alex was amazed at his good ears when she spoke those things. Without warning, he started crying and Catalina followed suit. "I really love you, and I would do anything to make you happy," he said. "Without children, we would live forever." Those were the most lovely words she had heard in a long time at that very moment. But although she saw it as a sentimental reunion, this man was actually planning something quite sinister. You know, there's this proverb that says that when you love someone, you have to give something up, and sometimes that something may be letting go. However, Alex wasn't prepared for this. He wasn't prepared to give her the type of life she desired, and he couldn't let go of his own dreams. Overcome by avarice, he committed a heinous act. When they returned home that evening, they ate dinner and then went to bed. Alex climbed to his feet, tiptoed to a wardrobe, and did the unimaginable after he was certain Catalina was asleep. Catalina constantly used contraceptive pills, which she stored in a circular pill dispenser in the closet to avoid getting pregnant. Alex later converted these tablets to sugar pills. When he was finished, he put the pill dispenser back where it belonged and sauntered back to the bed, grinning impishly. "Now let's see how you wouldn't get pregnant," he believed. A few weeks later, Catalina's missing period terrified her. In addition, she had been experiencing severe exhaustion and increasing urination. Had the medications failed to produce the desired results? Was she carrying a child? Fearing for her life, she hurried to acquire a pregnancy test. The test revealed she was 5 weeks pregnant, which greatly shocked her. There were not enough words to express how furious she felt. Catalina disclosed the pregnancy to Alex. She was surprised to see that he was ecstatic about the news. She sensed right away that he was hiding something from her based on the expression on his face. Then she asked rather directly why he was happy. Alex insisted that fate had decreed this result, even though she had made it obvious to him previously that she didn't want children. She was still unaware that Alex had anything to do with it, and she detested him deeply for his happiness despite her anger and inability to be with him at this point. She needed time to consider, not even sure whether she was going to keep the babies. After telling him she would never want to see his unfortunate face again, she hurried out of the house and moved in with her parents. She soon found out she was expecting twin boys, but it didn't make her feel any better. She was sad the rest of the pregnancy until it came time to give birth. Regretfully, a negative incident occurred. The physicians hurried over to her shortly after the babies were born and instructed her to brace herself. His words, "One of the kids may not survive," broke Catalina's heart. Whether something happened to the children, she did not know whether she would live. She was made aware of the horrors of parenting at that horrifying time, but she was certain that she would become a mother once more in her future life. One twin was placed in an incubator due to his lower-than-average size and weak heart at birth. Upon seeing her second son's look, Catalina realized he was missing his twin brother. Consequently, she ordered a nurse to bring the kid to his brother's incubator. All she wanted to do was bid the young lads, sadly, farewell. However, what ultimately transpired exceeded everyone's expectations. The healthy child hugged his ailing sibling a few seconds after they had positioned the twins side by side. He seemed to be providing him with the power he was lacking. At that moment, a miracle took place. Vital signs improved for the unwell youngster while the twins hugged. There were no adequate words to express to all those in attendance what had just transpired. The ailing twin was kept near his sibling by the physicians as the weeks went by, and everyone was shocked by how quickly he recovered. When the boy gained sufficient strength, the doctors cleared them to return home. The door of Catalina's maternity room opened slightly that day as she was about to leave, and she saw someone she had assumed would never exist again. It was Alex. He carried a deck of cards as he approached her. He handed out the cards one by one and, with a sad heart, informed her he had a confession. These were the words on the cards that she read. "I apologize for forcing you to become a mother before you were ready. All I wanted was to have children, and I felt like I could get you to reconsider as well. I gave you sugar tablets instead of birth control, which is why you're in so much agony. I'm ready to make apologies if you give me the chance, even though I know you might never want me in your life again." Catalina started crying uncontrollably the moment she finished reading. She never would have thought he would turn on her in such a manner. How could he act so readily against her will and still profess to love her? It isn't the essence of real love. She couldn't stomach his selfishness, even if this choice had given her the greatest gift of her life. "I can't let you back into my life," she said to him after gathering herself and letting go. "You blew the opportunity to handle things the proper way. Although I would want to spend my time with my children alone right now, perhaps in the future I will allow you to meet them." She gave him a little grin and added, "I hope you have a great life." She then showed him the door. He had nothing else to say and turned to leave, pausing only to give the door one more look. She returned to her boys and gave them a loving look after he departed. Right now, they gave her the willpower to battle through all of her shortcomings. Her motivation to go for the stars and beyond came from them. She was determined to be the greatest mother there could be. We will all inevitably make mistakes in our lifetimes. On the other hand, certain errors might permanently damage our hearts. This is the tale of a devoted mother who kept her child in a crib, but when she returned, the sight of her beloved child tore at her heart, and she couldn't stop wailing. Terry was burned about 90% of her body in a fire at her Chantry, Suffolk house when she was just 22 months old. She was therefore the youngest burn survivor in Britain. Her mother had put her to sleep in a cot, but she didn't realize that she had left a cigarette burning in her child's room. 2 months before to the fire tragedy in Terry's hometown, Julie had split from Terry's father, Paul Calsbert, a manufacturing worker, 1998. Paul was out of the office at work on the day of the tragic incident. When she first walked out of the apartment, she had the intention of getting her own place and moving in with her infant. But she returned and moved in with Paul as a friend since she had missed her child so much. Although Julie doesn't usually smoke in the apartment, she couldn't figure out why she did it this specific day. She acknowledged that it was a bad decision. She said, "I don't know why to this day I did such a stupid thing." While speaking with Terry, the British mother unintentionally placed the cigarette down in her bedroom and left. During one of her initial interviews, she expressed sorrow for the event and stated she would relive it every second of her life. "She went through all of this because of me." Although she occasionally considered suicide, she realized that her daughter would still need her. The events of November 21, 1998, were a depressing experience. Since Terry was a peaceful and intelligent child who normally slept well, Julie did not know why the young boy would not stop sobbing when she left the room. She didn't think anything may be amiss at first, but as her daughter's cries became louder, she hurried back in the direction of the room. However, her baby's room was on fire when she arrived. The terrified mother instantly phoned 999, the emergency number, and began shouting out loud but was at a loss for words. She said, "My girl's in the bedroom, there's a fire." Julie became frightened and was unable to enter her baby's room. She then said that a great deal of people had told her that she ought to have gone in there and delivered her baby following the event. Julie had to summon firefighters to assist her rescue her baby since she was unable to enter her baby's room. She felt really afraid. She attempted to douse the flames herself, hurling bowls of water into her infant's bedroom, but to no avail. The firemen finally showed up after some time. Little Terry had ceased weeping by now. Terry was seen by the firefighters. They had trouble identifying the infant and questioned the girl's chances of survival. Simon Bevan, one of the firemen, stated that he had never seen somebody with burns as severe as Terry's. Her body was so rigid from her burns that it was hard for the firefighters to elevate her neck and start a CPR. Julie could not stand to look at the burn damage her lovely baby had sustained. After the fire was effectively extinguished by the firefighters, Terry was taken to Broomfield Hospital in Chelmsford, Essex, where she fought for her life. For Julie and her family, who were in the hospital to support her, it was an anxious moment. The attending physician for the infant's medical care nearly ended. He informed Julie and Paul that the infant had stopped breathing twice, but they were able to bring her back to life. Then he inquired about what to do in the event that she stopped breathing once more. Julie was in complete shock and had no idea what to say or do. Then her father spoke out, instructing the physician to follow his lead. Thankfully, that didn't happen again, since tiny Terry was such a strong fighter. Paul wondered to himself, is he going to lose his daughter too after first losing his wife? And was filled with great concern. What was noteworthy now was that her loving daughter never made judgments about her. It was easy for her to despise her mother and wish she had nothing at all to speak to her once more, but she never did. Terry came to terms with the fact that what had transpired had been an error. Instead, she contacted her mother to reassure her that she was not to be sorry for anything that had happened that night, that she was her mom forever, and that she had nothing to be sorry for. Is it not astounding how wonderful Terry is? Julie had intense emotions when Terry's recuperation reached a tipping point. She stated, "I was sitting in the chair holding her in my arms and she just looked at me and said, 'Mom.'" Let's just assume that this woman was crying at that very moment. For weeks, the recuperating infant had not spoken until she uttered that one syllable. For Julie, a single statement just deepened her sadness as she convinced herself that she was to blame for all that had occurred. Following many months of surgeries and intense rehabilitation at Broomfield Hospital in Chelmsford, Essex, the 2-year-old daughter went back to her grandparents' house to live with her father, Paul. Terry's body was severely damaged. necessitating several surgeries. She needed to have the skin replaced as she grew, so she had to have roughly 40 skin transplant procedures. Her nose had to be operated on as part of her face reconstruction procedure. Julie cried after the fire incident when she saw her baby. "She was so swollen, I didn't even know if it was her," the woman remarked. "It was forbidden for me to touch her. It was terrifying." Only a few months after the tragedy, she made the terrible decision to stop seeing her daughter. She severed all ties to her child for a decade. Although she was having a very tough time, she considered the possibility that her guilt may not be as severe if her infant had not been around. Terry's bad experience almost destroyed her connection with her mother, who became so upset over her daughter's predicament that she could not bear to have her around. Julie acknowledges that she misses her beautiful daughter. When she later attempted to contact her daughter, social services informed her that she was not able to do so. Several years prior, the two had a tearful reunion. It seemed as though Julie and her lovely daughter had never parted when they first met. They shared the lovely moment by giving one another long embraces. Following that, they lost touch with one another for some time, but as of late, they have resumed messaging. Terry's mother said that occasionally they would text back and forth for 4 hours straight without stopping. The girl never once lost her smile, even in spite of her challenging circumstances. Many people were moved by her tale, and in 2012, the Ipswich Star newspaper launched an appeal for her, which raised around £500,000. Terry's well-wishers chose to aid with her future and gave this money. Additionally, she was assisted in leading as normal a life as possible by the innovative work of Professor Peter Zawelski at St. Andrew's Burn Center in Chelmsford, Essex. Incredible thing, huh? Terry says she has forgiven her mother for the fire outbreak in a documentary about the youngest burn survivor in Britain, although she wishes her mother had spent more time with her. Sometimes, when she's older, she remembers that her mother shouldn't have been smoking in their house. She dismissed that idea, though, reasoning that anybody may make a mistake and it wasn't her fault in the first place. Julie is a happy mother who adores her daughter today. She realized that she had to let go of her previous sins and move on from her guilt after witnessing her daughter's incredible qualities. The young child is still having surgeries to help her skin repair from harm. Terry declares that she would carry on pursuing her aspirations like everyone else and that she would not let the fire incident to define her life. Terry's narrative demonstrates that forgiveness can treat several ailments. These days, a lot of people all throughout the world look up to her. What lessons can you draw from this tale? Tell me in the comments below. I hope to run across you again soon. For now, bye. The old guy brought his ailing dog to the vet clinic with the intention of putting it to sleep. He was so overcome with sadness that he was about to destroy himself. But shortly before the deadly treatment was performed, an abrupt and unanticipated occurrence happened, leaving the man completely stunned. Pets are treasured as if they were members of the family and frequently become essential elements of people's life. For Jacob, an old grandpa who had lived with his black Labrador Buddy for 7 years, this was definitely the case. Buddy had been Jacob's constant friend and source of solace ever since his wife passed away many years ago. For Jacob, Buddy was a constant friend, and the old man cherished their relationship. Even so, with so many people coming to see him, including family members who used to come more often while his wife was still living, Jacob never felt lonely because of Buddy's company. Jacob found great solace in the black Labrador, who also gave him a reason to get out of bed every morning. Jacob was 91 years old, yet he was still quite active and liked taking walks. Putting a lead around the black Labrador's neck, he would frequently take Buddy on lengthy walks around the rural areas close to his house. Buddy never attempted to stray or flee, preferring to stroll side by side with his owner. Buddy would always come back, almost as if to make sure, when Jacob would take off the leash and let him run free on the elderly man. On bad days, Jacob would talk with Buddy while relaxing on the same park seat that he formerly shared with his wife. The black Labrador would listen intently as he talked about his wife, his emotions, and his plans for the next few days. Every now and again, Buddy would incline his head as though he comprehended what the elderly guy said. When Jacob woke up one morning, he saw that Buddy was not with him as he normally was. Usually, the black Labrador followed him out of bed with great speed. When Jacob noticed that Buddy was not present, he became worried. When he approached the dog's bed, Buddy was sleeping there with a dejected look in his eyes. Jacob was alarmed by this sight since he disliked seeing his one and only friend in such a condition. The dog didn't seem interested in food, and when Jacob waggled his lead, he refused to go for a walk. The elderly guy hoped that Buddy would feel better the following day since he was concerned. But Buddy was still in the same state a few days later. He had hardly eaten, drank, or moved. All he had done was slumber and sometimes complain. Taking a chair by Buddy's bed, Jacob read aloud to him in an effort to soothe his cherished dog, as well as to distract himself from his own anxieties. However, the following morning, Buddy could hardly even open his eyes or raise his head. It was obvious that Jacob needed to take him to the veterinarian in order to diagnose the problem. Buddy was limping as the human battled to bring him into the veterinary facility, but he still tried his hardest to make his best buddy comfortable. Buddy had been silently and softly complaining the entire time. The receptionist observed the old guy struggling with the dog and hurried to assist him, carrying him directly into the veterinarian's office and setting him down on the table. The veterinarian started researching Buddy. She checked his eyes, touched all over his body, and listened to his heart in an attempt to determine precisely what wasn't right. It was quickly determined that Buddy had a severe infection and that prompt treatment was required if he was to recover. Buddy was in great discomfort from the condition, which had the potential to kill him if left untreated and spread to the rest of his body. Jacob was completely taken aback by the news. By now, Buddy was one of his last remaining friends, and the dog had become more like family to him than any of his biological relatives. So the old guy was really distressed to hear that Buddy was so very sick. If his best buddy were to disappear, he had no idea what he would do. Regretfully, however, the infection would require highly costly treatment. Not having a lot of money saved up, Jacob would not be able to pay for the care Buddy would require to survive. The old man's mind slowly began to register the fact that his beloved pet would very certainly die in misery, full of infection and horror. Gazing down at poor Buddy, Jacob's eyes began to well up with tears. The veterinarian offered advice after recognizing the elderly man's situation. Jacob was informed by her that euthanizing the dog would be a lot faster and less painful option. Buddy would go to sleep soundly and die swiftly and softly after receiving a single little shot. This was the very best option. But Jacob had no desire for Buddy to pass away. He was unable to envision life without his darling dog and the invaluable companionship he offered. More than Buddy would ever know, he had done and was currently doing more for Jacob. Jacob sobbed as he promised the veterinarian that he would work to raise the necessary funds. He fished through his pockets, leaving a few scrunched bills as a deposit on the table, then gently picked up Buddy and shuffled out of the room. He informed the veterinarian that he would return in 3 days with the remaining funds as he was leaving. However, as the days went by, Jacob was unable to raise the required sum. On the morning of the later, Jacob sobbed silently while he dressed, got his meager cash together, and scooped up Buddy, giving him a tight embrace. Buddy only let out a gentle cry as though he realized what was about to happen to him, as Jacob expressed his regret to the unfortunate dog for not being able to help him. When Jacob arrived to the veterinarian, tears were still streaming from his eyes. Buddy laid miserably on the table as he was carried by him all the way to the veterinarian's office, where he sat and stroked his head. The veterinarian readied the injection that would put the dog to sleep and allow him to die in peace. Jacob, unable to contain his grief, cried hard as she walked up to Buddy. He gave Buddy one final embrace. There was a lengthy silence during which all that could be heard was Buddy's quiet moaning and Jacob's heavy tears as they waited for the inevitable to come. The veterinarian set down the syringe and gave the elderly man and the dog a serious glance. She approached Jacob, knelt beside his chair, and comforted him by running her hand up and down his back. She decided what to do after realizing the senior man's dog meant to him and how significant Buddy was in his life. She offered to provide the care at no cost. Jacob was afraid of Buddy since he was still a young man and should have many years of joyful life ahead of him. He needed his cherished dog to support him because he was alone in this world. The veterinarian's inability to terminate both of their lives was intolerable. She had promised Jacob that she would save lives, which was why she had decided to become a doctor. Jacob was ecstatic to hear this assurance from the veterinarian and embraced her tightly. The veterinarian was so moved by the profound effect she was having on their lives that she started crying a little herself. Buddy was immediately brought into surgery, where the veterinarian started to completely eradicate the illness from the Black Labrador's body. Thankfully, the veterinarian completed her task, and Jacob was overjoyed to hear that Buddy would get better and be as strong and healthy as ever. Jacob gave the veterinarian his sincere appreciation for all of her hard work. The veterinarian rejected Jacob's offer to give her the money he had saved as a thank you gift. But sometimes she would come see Jacob and Buddy, going on walks with them and keeping the old man and his dog company. The old man's life was a bit less lonely since the veterinarian had saved Buddy's life, giving him a lifetime friend in Jacob, as well as a devoted companion in the Black Labrador. What do you think of this wonderful and touching story? If a vet told you that your pet needed to be put to sleep, how would you react? If you were wealthy, would you agree to pay for the medical care of someone else's pet? Tell us in the space provided for comments. Life in Middletown is predictable and everyone appear to know each other. The town is peaceful and serene. One day, a little child who is strange and unidentified shows up at the police station asking for assistance. With the exception of one officer, Samuel "Sammy" Jenkins, the town's police force was jaded by their daily routine and disregarded the boy's pleadings. Middletown was the picture of tranquility, tucked away in the center of the state. The streets pulsed with the regular rhythm of everyday life, and the trees there murmured tales of the town's lengthy past. However, one steamy day, a little unkempt youngster named Teddy wandered into the local police station, shattering the calm exterior of the community. In this well-known community, Teddy was a mystery that had arrived out of the blue. His wide, terrified eyes reflected a sense of urgency that didn't seem appropriate for the relaxed environment of the station. Tears streaked his dirt-smudged face as he stammered forth a narrative that seemed unthinkable for a town the size of Middletown. He claimed his mother had been abducted. The lack of major criminal activity in Middletown had lulled the officers at the station into complacency, so they dismissed Teddy's allegation as a child's imagination, a crazy exaggeration, or maybe a cry for attention. They believed that kidnappings only occurred in far-off cities, not in their quiet village. With a tense mixture of incredulity and irritation, they turned down Teddy's entreaties. It was simpler to write Teddy off as a wayward runaway than to give credence to his upsetting story, since this was an interruption, an abnormality in their usually ordinary routine. But one officer stood out among the sea of doubters, Samuel "Sammy" Jenkins. With a heart as big as the surrounding grasslands, Sammy had a loving spirit. His character was molded by an unconscious empathy derived from his own early experiences and generosity. Teddy's cries reverberated throughout the station, and Sammy was a ready recipient. His instinct caused him to halt and see Teddy as a terrified youngster in dire need of assistance rather than as an interruption. Teddy's nervous manner, the slight quivering in his hands, and the genuine worry in his voice were all picked up by Sammy's weary eyes. He saw that this was a sincere request for assistance rather than a pointless pursuit. He felt a wave of pity wash over him, a flashback taking him back to a time when he had been just as afraid and powerless as Teddy. Driven by obligation and an unexplainable connection to the terrified youngster, Sammy made the choice to pay attention, to really pay attention, to Teddy's tale. While his co-workers persisted in their contemptuous banter, Sammy bent over, met Teddy's gaze, and provided him with what the rest of the crew had not been able to: empathy, comfort, and a pledge to assist. Unbeknownst to him at the time, his decision would solve a riddle that would upend the peace of Middletown. Sammy was sucked uncontrollably into Teddy's world the instant he bent over and paid attention to his cries. It was a dismal universe, molded by anxiety, filled to overflowing with extreme despair, and characterized by an unshakable will to save his mother. Behind this hard exterior, Sammy understood, was a little, vulnerable heart that pulsated with hope, terror, and a love so deep it was willing to confront the unthinkable. Sammy began to draw connections between Teddy's reality and his own history as he dug more into it. Usually relegated to the back of his mind's dusty recesses, his recollections started to rise again. Teddy's diminutive frame and terrified expression brought back memories of his own helplessness and loneliness. He felt compelled to take action, as though he was gazing into a mirror that reflected a period in his past. Sammy opted to ignore his co-workers' skepticism at the police station as background noise. Their doubt, based on Middletown's tranquil past, stood in sharp contrast to Sammy's increasing certainty. Sammy was increasingly determined as they continued to reject Teddy's allegations. He made the courageous decision to look into Teddy's accusations and to take a chance on the young stranger. Soon after, Sammy and Teddy set out on their adventure together. A fearful but driven child and an experienced cop with years of experience working together for a common goal made for an unexpected alliance. They started carefully assembling the pieces of the supposed kidnapping. Teddy's mother was one step closer to them with each new clue they discovered and path they followed. They followed every lead that led them, spoke with neighbors, and went back to the suspected crime location. Teddy's persistence impressed Sammy. Driven by his intense desire to save his mother, the child never shied away from jumping deeply into the inquiry, even in the face of terror. Finding the kidnapper's identity required maneuvering through a maze. They discovered new information with every turn and twist. Some pointed to the abductor, while others offered hints as to Teddy's mother's whereabouts. Despite the difficulties and dead ends in the inquiry, Teddy and Sammy were unwilling to give up. Sammy saw his perspective change as they dug further into the mystery. He was more than simply an officer going about his business. He had evolved into a child's rock. Sammy was motivated to bring Teddy's mother home safely by Teddy's bravery, even if their quest was becoming more and more dangerous. This mission was now more than simply a case solved. It was a monument to the resiliency of the human spirit and the strong relationship created in the furnace of common struggle. As Sammy and Teddy continued to delve further into their inquiry, they found connections that took them to places they had never imagined. Remarkably, a few leads led to well-known local residents, pillars of the community, people regarded as models of trustworthiness and morality. It seemed like a Pandora's box of secrets that the quiet town of Middletown had been carefully hiding until these ties were finally revealed. The town's formerly cheery outlook was clouded by the uncovering of these disquieting connections. Middletown appeared to be a vision of beauty, but upon closer inspection, ominous images concealed behind the layers of paint. Sammy and Teddy began to wonder whether the tranquility of the town was really a skillfully constructed facade, a layer covering up the less pleasant realities that were hidden behind its perfect exterior. Middletown started to resemble a network of secrets and conspiracies, rather than the comfortable, peaceful town they were used with each new, unsettling revelation that came to light. The amiable countenances of the villagers appeared to conceal hidden narratives, their warm grins barely masking the simmering unease inside the community. Silent murmurs appeared to reverberate from every corner, each one holding the key to unlocking the terrible enigma they were trying to unravel. At the same time as the inquiry was unfolding, Teddy and Sammy were growing closer in terms of trust. Sammy started teaching Teddy the fundamentals of investigative work, building on his years of police expertise. With every new disturbing discovery that came to light, Middletown began to resemble a web of secrets and conspiracies rather than the cozy, tranquil town they were used to. The friendly faces of the peasants seemed to hide stories under their smiles, the simmering anxiety in the group only somewhat concealed by their welcoming smiles. Every nook seemed to be filled with soft whispers, each one bearing a secret that would help them solve the horrible mystery they were attempting to solve. Teddy and Sammy's level of trust was increasing concurrently with the investigation. Sammy began imparting to Teddy, via his years of police experience, the principles of investigative investigation. Sammy shared his knowledge with them for hours, showing them how to decipher evidence, investigate leads, and follow their gut feelings when reason seemed to fail. Teddy, on the other hand, showed himself to be a quick study. Like a sponge, he soon picked up on the subtleties taught to him by Sammy. They created an alliance in the heat of their difficult pursuit as they collaborated, exchanging thoughts and possible leads. Their mutual dedication to the truth and their shared weight of the task united them. Sammy and Teddy's relationship developed into much more than just in a mentor-mentee relationship. They would become comrades in a cause greater than themselves. As they waded into the murky waters of their research, their mutual trust served as a beacon of hope, guiding them through the menacing shadows produced by Middletown's exposed secrets. As they dug further, Sammy and Teddy transformed from a police officer and a little child into the truth seekers in a community full with lies. No matter how unsettling the secrets Middletown had been keeping, they were ready to reveal them thanks to their increasing friendship and common resolve. As the light of truth started to peek through the veil of Middletown's secrets, Sammy and Teddy encountered a strong foe. The kidnapper, who had been hiding in the shadows the entire while, realized they were following them. This unanticipated turn of events created a black cloud over Sammy and Teddy's inquiry and unleashed a torrent of threats against them. The kidnapper's nest had been disturbed by their pursuit of justice, and he responded as if he were a trapped animal. The town's atmosphere visibly changed. There was a pervasive sense of impending danger, as every shadow seemed to harbor some sort of menace, and every corner echoed with the prospect of conflict. Middletown, a quiet village, has become the set for a dangerous game of cat and mouse. Sammy had a lot more responsibility as the level of danger rose. He was put in the middle of a storm and given the responsibility of both saving young Teddy and the town's residents from the kidnapper's fury. Sammy was aware that any move he made may tip the scales in this precarious scenario, so he had to proceed with caution. The danger was increased along with the stakes. Sammy remained resolute despite the terrifying warnings. Rather, his defensive mechanisms went into overdrive, turning him into Teddy's unwavering defense and a stronghold against any dangers that would have derailed their objective. Their relationship was only made stronger by their shared experiences, which led to an unspoken understanding and unwavering trust. The plot took an unexpected turn just when they believed things couldn't get any more convoluted. When Sammy and Teddy learned who the kidnapper was, it was like receiving a shockwave out of the blue. They were shocked to learn that the kidnapper was someone they had never imagined, someone who was a part of their daily existence. They were sent into a frenzy of dismay and amazement by the news. Every one of Middletown's amiable faces may potentially be the antagonist in their own story, cloaked in uncertainty. Their entire worldview was upended and a hint of treachery added to the complexity of the situation. As Sammy and Teddy made their way through this dangerous and treacherous labyrinth, they encountered even more thorns in their path. They knew that this was the worst part of their trip now, but the mounting threats, the shocking betrayal, and the many levels of deceit strengthened their determination rather than weakening it. Their search for the truth had now turned into a conflict with time and lies. Teddy confronted the turmoil valiantly, with Sammy's shield of protection surrounding him and their common determination guiding them. This story had become more than simply a search for Teddy's mother. It was a struggle for justice, truth, and Middletown itself. Beneath the watchful sky and trepidating trees of Middletown, the climactic clash marked the end of Sammy and Teddy's quest. Their months-long odyssey culminated in a time when they had to face the abductor. It was an examination of their bravery, cunning, and the unshakable friendship they had created in the midst of hardship. The exchange resembled a high-stakes game of chess where each move and choice was a careful dance on the brink of disaster. But even in the face of danger, Sammy and Teddy remained resolute. They couldn't give up now. They had gone too far and faced too much. Equipped with their mutual resolve and unwavering faith in one another, they firmly established themselves prepared to battle for fairness. By using a calculated combination of bravery and cunning, they were able to outwit the abductor. Teddy's daring attitude and astute reasoning, along with Sammy's years of experience, swung the odds in their favor. Teddy's mother was successfully rescued, capping their grueling search despite the increasing strain and dangerous conditions. The town was rocked when the kidnapper's misdeeds were revealed. The townspeople saw a reality that rocked the very base of their calm and trust when the ominous curtain of secrets was removed. The realization was a tough pill to swallow, since it made them face the unsettling truth that had been concealed underneath their tranquil lives. Following this hurricane, Sammy became the epitome of bravery and tenacity. The people in the community, who had before disregarded Teddy's allegations, were now in admiration of his steadfast bravery and his unflinching dedication to justice. He gained the respect and affection of the community by acting as a bright example of what it meant to serve and protect. Teddy thanked Sammy from the bottom of his heart, feeling relieved and appreciative. To a little child, Sammy was more than simply a police officer. He was a buddy, a hero, and a protector. Teddy was so grateful that words could not express how much it meant to him. His eyes were full of admiration, and his grin was full of trust. Teddy and Sammy promised each other as they stood among the reverberations of their triumph. They had become inseparable over their trip, a closeness that had carried them through their worst moments. Their common experiences testifying to their special bond, they pledged to be friends. The incidents had shaken Middletown, a community long ensconced in its peaceful delusions. They gained invaluable insight into the value of empathy, the effectiveness of listening, and the necessity of elevating even the tiniest voices among them. They came to understand that, despite the appearance of calm, it was crucial to listen to the nagging voice of reality. Teddy's narrative ultimately showed the strength of trust, the force of unwavering perseverance, and the victory of truth, rather than merely the story of a criminal apprehended or a mother saved. Middletown has never been the same after Sammy and Teddy's excursion. It had a lasting impact on both the town's history and its residents' emotions. The town's peace was now accompanied by a heightened consciousness, an oath to pay attention, and a commitment to have faith, even in the most improbable circumstances. Please remember to subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our videos. If you enjoyed the tale, the next video that plays on your screen will probably move you too.